From Live Aid to E.T., fiendish puzzles to famous flops and terrifying TV villains, the 80s was a memorable decade. So let's take a nostalgic stroll through the A to Z of 80s memories. A beloved dessert that could have just as easily featured in the A to Z of 70s memories, Angel Delight was first introduced by Birds in 1967 and is still going strong today. While the height of its popularity was during the 1970s, this quick and easy dessert was still gracing many dining tables across the country throughout the 80s.
Rose Delight, the family's way. The roast delight, taste around. It's delicious, it's lovely. It's Angel Delight. It's fluffy, tasty, the lightest too. You just add milk and then whisk it through. It's delightful, it's delectable, it's the smoothest, it's delightest, it's the limit.
Bird's Angel Delight, the most delightful taste around.
There have been many flavour variants of Angel Delight over the years, so the big question is, which was your favourite? For me, there's only one winner: butterscotch. If I could go back in time to the 1980s to start a successful business, I think I'd choose to be a manufacturer of hairspray. So much of the stuff was used during the decade it would be easy to blame hairspray for the current state of the ozone layer. If you wanted to look fashionable in the 80s, there was only one way to wear your hair: big. Let's take a look at some prime examples. Let's give a shout out to the mullet too. For a brand so intrinsically linked with the 1980s, it may surprise you to learn that Cabbage Patch Kids are still made today. Thankfully, today's demand for these distinctive-looking dolls is nowhere near the fanatical levels reached in 1983, when riots broke out in stores across the United States, with thousands of people so desperate to get their hands on these seemingly innocent-looking dolls they were more than willing to fight each other to get one. Did you have a Cabbage Patch Kid when you were younger? Let me know in the comments. Another craze that had its beginnings in the early 80s, Dealy Boppers, or Dealy Bobbers as they were also known, were invented in 1981 and first went on general sale in the United States in 1982. Introduced in the UK soon after, this unique but ultimately useless fun fashion accessory swept the nation. However, they weren't just a flash in the pan soon to disappear. Dealy Boppers are still available today. You can't have an A to Z of the 80s without mentioning that lovable alien, E.T. After all, the film E.T. the Extraterrestrial became the highest grossing film of all time, holding on to that record until 1993, when it was surpassed by Jurassic Park, also directed by Steven Spielberg. Released in June 1982 in the US, cinemagoers in the UK had to wait until December of that year to see what all the fuss was about. Well, either that or just watch it on pirate video instead. And that is precisely what many people did at the time, their first impression of E.T. being a decidedly blurry one. If there is one thing you can say for certain about the 80s, when it comes to fashion, it was a highly distinctive decade to say the least. From shoulder pads and leg warmers to shell suits and leather ties, 80s dress sense wasn't exactly subtle. Least subtle of all was the infamous shell suit. For some reason, these garish nylon monstrosities were hugely popular during the 1980s, if only for a few short years. Did you ever own a shell suit in the 80s? Less garish, but still lacking subtlety, shoulder pads reached the peak of both popularity and size during the 1980s. Inspired by characters in TV shows such as Dynasty and Dallas, there was only one way people wanted their shoulder pads: big. Another television series to inspire a number of fashion crazes at the time was Miami Vice, with flecked sports jackets, pastel t-shirts and espadrilles becoming the order of the day. Looking to emulate Don Johnson, many of us probably ended up looking more like Boris Johnson. Running for a mightily impressive 30 years between 1978 and 2008, there are obviously a number of decades which you could associate with children's drama series Grange Hill. However, I believe that the show's golden era occurred between its debut in 1978 and the end of the 1980s. After all, many of Grange Hill's iconic characters were a part of the series during this time. Tucker Jenkins, Benny Green, Alan Humphreys, Tricia Yates, Suzanne Ross, Pogo Patterson, Gripper Stebson, Roland Browning, Zamo Maguire, Mr. Baxter, Mrs. McCluskey and Mr. Bronson. It was certainly a great time to be a fan of Grange Hill. If you wanted to know where to get a Hofmeister lager during the 1980s, all you had to do was follow the bear.
For a perfect summer's day, everything's got to be right. The sea, the company, and the view. And what better sight than the clear gold of a Hofmeister lager? Over the sea and the wind in your hair.
If you want great lager, follow the bear.
I used to wake each morning, really go to town, here and there, different smells, knowing I was round. But now there's you in Insignia, and it's all over now. Insignia's got everything, shampoo, shower gel, deodorant, and aftershave, one all over smell.
Insignia, the new all-over body program.
There's new Insignia, and it's all over now.
One of the most famous sportsmen on the planet at the time, tennis great John McEnroe was the undisputed bad boy of the sport during the early 80s. Despite winning many titles during his career, including 3 Wimbledon championships and 4 US Opens, at the peak of his playing powers, McEnroe was probably better known by most for his infamous on-court tantrums and arguments with officials.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
With "you cannot be serious" becoming a bit of an 80s catchphrase, the press christened McEnroe with the name Super Brat. Thankfully today, John McEnroe is remembered more for his prowess on the tennis court than for his volatile on-court temperament. Remember when our TV screens were filled with ultra-enthusiastic aerobics instructors urging us all to keep fit from the comfort of our living rooms? The likes of Lizzie and the Green Goddess would pop up on our screen daily, guiding the nation through various fitness routines with a constant cheery smile. At the same time, the best-selling video charts were dominated by workout videos fronted by various celebrities. Indeed, Hollywood star Jane Fonda carved a whole new career for herself in the 80s, with her workout videos proving incredibly popular. Her first release, Jane Fonda's Workout in 1982, not only sparked the worldwide craze for aerobics, but also increased sales of VHS video players too. The biggest single entertainment event of the 1980s, and likely of all time, Live Aid took place on Saturday the 13th of July 1985 at London's Wembley Stadium and the JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. Organised by Bob Geldof and Midge Ure, following on from their Band-Aid fundraising project of 1984, the Live Aid concert was actually inspired by an original suggestion made to Geldof by Boy George. Whether you watched the event on television or were lucky enough to be there live, it's hard to forget Live Aid. From Status Quo opening the Wembley concert with Rockin' All Over the World and the legendary performance by Queen, to Phil Collins playing at both Wembley and Philadelphia, courtesy of Noel Edmonds' Helicopter and Concorde. Live Aid was a true landmark 80s moment. Whether you call them movies or films, there is little doubt that the 1980s was a great decade for cinema goers. One of the most influential people in the film industry throughout the 80s was undoubtedly Steven Spielberg, director of the aforementioned E.T. and the Indiana Jones series. He also acted as producer on other blockbuster films of the decade, including one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time, Back to the Future. Fans of action films were well catered for, with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger ruling the roost, while in the world of comedy the likes of Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, John Candy and Dan Aykroyd were joined by emerging superstar Eddie Murphy. The 1980s also saw the rise of a new group of young actors known as the Brat Pack, whose members included Rob Lowe, Ali Sheedy, Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, Molly Ringwald and Judd Nelson. I would also happily argue that the 80s was one of the last truly great decades for the film soundtrack. Don't agree? Just take a look at these. Perhaps the biggest music trend of the 1980s was the rise of the New Romantics. With its roots in the nightclub scene of the late 70s, the New Romantic movement actually started as a fashion trend before spilling over into the music scene. Combining elements of the glam rock look and the style of the romantic period of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, early adopters of this unique style included Boy George, Steve Strange and Spandau Ballet. Soon, many other music artists became associated with the new romantic music genre, such as Duran Duran and Adamant. Did you ever dress in the new romantic style? Please let me know in the comments. On the night of the 8th of September 1981, the first episode of a new sitcom with the unusual title of Only Fools and Horses was broadcast on BBC One. With little fanfare to greet its arrival, this new series, written by Citizen Smith creator John Sullivan, didn't attract many viewers and was almost cancelled by the BBC. Luckily, it was given a second chance, and Only Fools and Horses steadily grew into the most watched British sitcom of all time, one that is always guaranteed to top any poll of the nation's favourite comedy series. Just think if Only Fools and Horses had been cancelled after that first series. Can you imagine a world without falling chandeliers, self-inflating blow-up dolls, or Del Boy falling through a bar? On a personal note, with no Only Fools, I wouldn't have got to know the late John Challis or write 2 Only Fools and Horses quiz books, available now on Amazon. It's a bit of shameless self-promotion, I know, but I'm sure Del Boy would be proud. One of the most beloved video games of all time, Pac-Man took the world by storm in 1980. Originally called Puckman in its native Japan, the game was developed by Toru Iwatani of games company Namco. Looking to make a non-violent arcade game that appealed to women as much as men, as well as younger players, the lovable character of Pac-Man was born, his look said to have been inspired by a pizza with one slice missing. A massive commercial success, Pac-Man was soon the #1 arcade game in Japan and the USA, bringing to an end the 2-year run of Space Invaders as top dog. Hugely influential, Pac-Man fully deserves its status as one of the greatest video games of all time. Have you ever managed to legitimately solve the Rubik's Cube? That is, complete it without resorting to peeling the stickers off or taking it apart and then putting it back together again. I know I never managed it, despite many frustrating years trying. One of the biggest crazes of the 1980s, the Rubik's Cube was actually invented way back in 1974 by Professor Arno Rubik. After being licensed by the Ideal Toy Corporation in 1980, the Rubik's Cube would very quickly become the world's most popular puzzle, selling over 100 million units in just 2 years. The very first Rubik's Cube World Championships were held in Budapest in 1982, the winner clocking in with a time of 22.95 seconds. Set in 2023, the current world record for solving the cube is an astonishing 3.13 seconds. It takes me longer than that to get the cube out of the packaging. After much anticipation, the Sinclair C5 was officially launched in January 1985. Before the end of that same year, production had ceased. One of the most infamous failures of the 1980s, the fact that the Sinclair C5 was launched in winter, when it really wasn't suited to driving in those conditions, probably doomed Sir Clive Sinclair's new baby right from the start. The press didn't help matters either by continually bringing into question the safety aspects of the C5. Performance-wise, the Sinclair C5 was not what it was claimed to be, with battery range only being half of what was stated. Throw in the fact that when it came to inclines it was quicker to walk, then it's easy to see why this innovative but hugely flawed vehicle quickly became a national joke.
Imagine a vehicle that can drive you 5 miles for a penny. A vehicle that needs no petrol, just a battery. And that takes the press of a button to start, the squeeze of a lever to stop. That needs no license, no road tax, and you can drive whether you're 14 or 40. A vehicle that costs just £399. The Sinclair C5. It's a new power in personal transport. The Sinclair C5, £399. Want to buy one? Want to see one? Or simply want to read all about it? Just dial 100 and ask for free phone C5 now.
A 1980s dinner party wasn't really a dinner party without a game of Trivial Pursuit to finish the evening's festivities. Just 5 years after its launch in 1981, this now classic board game had sold over 20 million units.
Tension mounts as the East-West talks go into their second session.
Answer the question, comrade, if you please. What was Julius Marx more commonly known as? Karl? No. Groucho.
Well, here's one for your arms expert. What's tattooed on Popeye's arm?
Gentlemen, enough, please. The Star Wars question. Who was Luke Skywalker's father?
Trivial Pursuit. 6,000 questions of no vital importance whatsoever.
Way down deep in the middle of the Congo, a hippo took an every caught the rover and a mango. He stuck it with the others and he danced a biggie tango. The rhino said, I know, we'll call it Umbango. Umbango, you shake it in the Congo. Python picked the passion from the mama, said the mandarin. The pirate painted bandits got the bunker boogie landed in. So when it comes to sun and fun and goodness in the jungle, they all prefer the sunny funny one they call Umbango.
Libby's Umbango. High juice drinks, free from artificial ingredients.
One of the abiding memories of the 80s for many of us, carefully browsing the shelves of our local video rental shop searching for a film that took our fancy, is an experience that younger generations have sadly missed out on. Having to physically go out of the house to secure your film for the evening somehow enhanced the subsequent viewing experience. Having made the effort to rent your video, if the film was good, you could congratulate yourself on a choice well made. A poor film was made even worse by the fact you had spent hours choosing it. Then there was the joy of finally seeing a release for which you had been on the waiting list for months, such as Michael Jackson's Thriller video. While it is now easier than ever to instantly watch almost any film you wish, there was a certain charm to the good old-fashioned video shop. To take you through one of the biggest television events in history, here's a short video first posted on Stuview TV in 2022.
Do we really find out tomorrow who did it?
Yes, that's right. Yes, tomorrow is the big day.
At the time, it was the biggest television whodunit ever broadcast. Who shot JR? In March 1980, the super soap Dallas popularised the cliffhanger when the show's bad boy J.R. Ewing was shot by an unknown assailant. It quickly became a worldwide phenomenon as people across the globe tried to figure out the answer to the burning question, who shot JR?
Coming up right now.
You know everything.
Here in the UK, it was on this day, November the 22nd in 1980, that the mystery shooter was revealed to more than 21 million people. Viewers in the States had found out the night before, with an incredible 83 million people tuning in. So, just who did shoot JR? It was Kristen Shepherd, sister of Sue Ellen. There really isn't a huge choice of entries for the letter X. Thankfully, despite forming back in 1972, rock band XTC were still experiencing much success by the time the 1980s rolled around. Their commercial breakthrough came with the single Making Plans for Nigel in 1979. In 1982, they released one of their most successful records, Senses Working Overtime. Loud, colourful and right in your face, the young ones ripped up the television comedy rulebook in gloriously anarchic fashion.
Hello, this is a trailer for the young ones.
Hi, I'm Neil, and I'm one of the young ones. We're going to be coming on your screens very soon with lots of bands and laughter and fun. Let me introduce you to some of my wacky pals. This is Vivian. And Mike. And this is Rick.
Right. That's it, Neil. I said 10 seconds.
The Young Ones, a new comedy series for the autumn, next Tuesday at 9 o'clock on BBC Two.
Fast-paced, often surreal, and employing a cartoon style of slapstick violence, The Young Ones was a TV tornado the likes of which we had never seen before. Making huge stars of Rick Mayall, Ade Edmondson and Nigel Planer, names which were previously only really known to followers of the alternative comedy scene, The Young Ones became the definitive show of the 80s generation. Let's finish our nostalgic stroll through the A to Z of 80s memories with one of the most terrifying TV villains of the decade, the infamous Zelda from Terrorhawks. The main villain in the Jerry Anderson series Terrorhawks, android Zelda is hell-bent on conquering planet Earth and destroying the human race, or as she calls us, Earth scum or Earth pukes. With her wrinkled skin, wild grey hair, evil eyes and screeching voice, Zelda truly was the stuff of nightmares. Who was your favourite TV villain of the 1980s? Do please let me know in the comments. Here's a quick reminder of some of the people we love to hate. I would love to hear some of your favourite memories of the decade that was the 1980s. Do please let me know in the comments. As always, many thanks for watching and do join me next time for more nostalgic goodness.